Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk all things health and healing from a holistic perspective. And today will be no different. Today, I'm going to give you 10 benefits of fasting and why you need to incorporate it not only into your lifestyle, but as a healing hack. Okay. This is the game changer that a lot of people miss out on because most people are addicted to food. And the idea of not having a fork or spoon in their mouth for an extended period of time for a lot of people is just too much. Okay, but it's the game changer that most people are missing out on. If you go back to ancient times, you'll see that all of the great mystics, all of the great prophets at some point in their journey did a fast. And many of them did a fast for 21 days, 40 days, and 40 nights. The list goes on and on. And so there's a huge sort of missing line to the story as to why they were doing those fasts. Now, for me, I talk about this in my book, Education Over Medication, me doing a fast. It was one of the most enlightening journeys that I've ever gone on. And I've been to over 80 countries in my journey. But this was one of the journeys that when I went on my fast, and I did a water fast, and I've also done a liquid fast, and I've also done a fruit fast. I've done different types of fasts, which we'll talk about in a second. But in terms of like mental clarity, spiritual upliftment, healing in the body, reconnection with myself, reconnection to the things that are important, bar none, one of the most, impactful things that I've ever done was fasting. And so this is why I think this is so important. And quite often when you guys are asking me for recommendations, especially when it comes to things that are difficult to heal, fasting is always one of the things that I mention, but I never dive into the topic. So today we're going to be diving into the topic. And one of the beautiful things about fasting, and I'm going to give you 10 benefits of fasting today. And with those 10, the beautiful thing is that you'll see that fasting heals a wide variety and range of issues, conditions, and ailments in the body. And this is only 10. And trust me, there are many more. So this is a very important conversation, something that our ancestors were very privy to in terms of incorporating in their lifestyle. And to be honest with you, in many cases, it wasn't due to the fact that they were trying to heal anything, because the further and further you go back and the more connected we are with nature and real food, the less disease you see. But most importantly, for spiritual upliftment, connection with self, connection with the divine, and also guidance. A lot of times we're searching for guidance and instruction, and that guidance instruction is within us. And it's important for us to know and understand that a lot of times it's blurred or muffled and you can't hear it, is because all of this food, negativity, the environment that we live in, the culture that we breathe and sleep in and live in is distorted us. So fasting is one of the ways we can reconnect with ourselves. So without any further ado, let me first sort of break down some different types of fasting, because I think that's important. Because, I'm going to give you a tip in a second, and deciding what type of fast you're going to do is very important. And to understand why one versus the other is a whole nother conversation. But I think what works for you works for you. Okay, so there are many types of fasts. You can do a fast for religious purposes. So in the Islamic faith, they do Ramadan. They do no food, essentially from, I do believe in the middle of the night until about 6 o'clock, or darkness. So that's a type of fasting. You also have liquid fasting. So you can do liquid fasting where the only thing you're consuming is liquids. But you also can do a juice fast, okay, where everything is in the form of juice. I've also done a coconut water fast as well too. Intermittent fasting is probably one of the most popular and trendy types of forms of fasting today. So intermittent fasting is a window of time where you're not eating, or you could look at that window in another way as a period that you are eating. And that window that you are eating is much reduced compared to the window that you you actually aren't. Okay. And what I mean by that is you could have a 16 and 8 fast. That means 16 hours of no eating and then only an 8-hour window of eating. And to be honest with you, an 8-hour window is a huge window. Okay. I know a lot of people don't look at it like that because people are literally eating from the moment that they get up. Okay. They get up and the first thing they're doing is feeding their pie hole with breakfast. And then they're on their way to lunch, work, and they have a snack. And then they have lunch. And then between lunch and dinner, they have another snack. And then they have dinner. And then before they go to bed, they probably have something else. So they're grazing throughout the day. So again, the concept of fasting for a lot of people is very foreign for that reason. Okay. But intermittent fasting is the opportunity to say, all right, this is my time restricted window. Okay. So it may be an 8-hour window where you decide, from 8 to 5, 8 to 4, 8 to 5. Okay. That's my window of eating. After 4 or 5 o'clock, no eating for me. Okay. So that 8-hour window would be your window of eating, your time restricted eating. Get all the eating you want to in that period. And then the rest of the time, which is 16 hours, no eating. Okay. So that's a form of intermittent fasting. I know people who also do 20 and 4. So they have a 4-hour window. So like most days, without even knowing it, my window when I do intermittent fasting is probably a 20 and 4. Because I'll give you, for instance, like today, and I don't even think about it. Like, for instance, today, I didn't eat anything when I got up. I had some water, some tea, and I typically will have fruit a little bit later in the morning, but I didn't have fruit because I was busy. And then I went and worked out. And then after I worked out, I had a meeting. And then after I had a meeting, I had a live with my membership program, Triad Healing Community. And then finally, I'm like, okay, now it's time to eat. And so, some days I don't eat until like 4 o'clock, so I may eat from 4 to 7. Okay. So I may have like a 3-hour window or like start to eat at 3 and end at 4. So to be honest with you, that's more than enough for me because the first thing I'll have is a little bit of fruit. And then maybe an hour later, I'll have a meal and then I'll be done for today. So that's more than enough for me. Doesn't work for everybody, but again, I'm just showing you what a 20 and 4 window can look like. So that's intermittent fasting. You can also do what's called alternate day fasting, where you eat one day and then the next day you don't eat at all. Okay. So you may be just drinking liquids on the off day. Okay. So that's another form of fasting. And what I will also want to mention is abstaining is not fasting. Okay. When you say I'm not going to eat any processed food, that's abstaining. That's not fasting. Okay. I think that's important to mention because a lot of people are confusing. Oh, I'm abstaining from meat. Nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean that it's not beneficial. I think it's important to note that it's just not fasting. Okay. Abstaining is different from fasting. Okay. Another type of fast is water fasting. Okay. So I've done juice fasting. I've done intermittent fasting. I've done fruit fasting where it's only fruit. Again, in my opinion, that's not fasting, but some people call it that. But I've also done water fasting. And the longest period that I personally gone is 21 days of only water. Now, big disclaimer here. Okay, big disclaimer. It's important to know if you are on medications, you have diabetes or other conditions, fasting may not be for you because there are certain medications that you must take with foods. Diabetics can be prone to having hypoglycemia, which is very low blood sugar. So that's a concern as well too. So it's just important to know and understand that if you have medical conditions or on medications, that this is probably something you need to talk about with your primary physician, okay? Especially if you're on medications, okay? So hugely important. But yeah, I've done water fasting. I've done it up for 21 days. It was an amazing experience. And what was unique, by day 21, you would think I would be like clamoring for food, like I'm ready to eat. I was actually afraid to eat food on day 21. I just said that it was enough because I had lost a lot of weight during that time. But I did so much healing, not only just physical healing, but a lot of emotional and spiritual healing as well too. So, but that was the very unique thing, is that you go through this period where it's withdrawals because you're so used to eating and your body's so used to eating. And then there's this shift where your body goes from going back and forth between the cravings and wanting to eat to finally getting into a mode where it doesn't even, you don't even think about food. Okay. Because most people, all they think about is food. They eat breakfast and then they're like, all right, I need to figure out what I'm going to have for lunch. Literally, most people think like that. But there's this shift when you're on the fast where you go from not even thinking about food and not even wanting food to being afraid of food. Okay, what it's going to do to you, because I've seen people come off fast, and we'll talk about that. Most importantly, well, let's start that with the tips. When you're coming off your fast, do not eat anything crazy, okay? I've seen people go on fast for extended periods, come off the fat and eat something crazy, and then their body's having a reaction to it, like a really bad reaction to the food. See, right now, you really don't understand what your food is doing to you. But if you go through a fast, especially a water fast, over an extended period of time, any impurities that you put in and on your body, you will instantly have a response to. So it's important to know that at the end of a fast, you want to put something in your body. The first thing I would highly recommend is something like melon fruit. So a cantaloupe, a honeydew melon, watermelon, if it's in season, those type of things, that's what you're supposed to have, okay, when you're coming off of a fast. That's just really, really important tip. The first tip, because you can't even get to that if you don't start that, the first tip is ease your way into it. Figure out what type of fasting is best for you. Figure out how long you're going to fast. If it's intermittent fasting, what window are you going to do? If you're going to do something like water fasting, I highly recommend don't do anything more than 1 to 3 days, especially if you have a medical condition. Okay, you probably want to do it supervised. Okay, you most definitely want to do it supervised. Just trust me on this. All right. And so ease your way into it. Figure out what type of fast. Don't start with you've never done a fast and you've never eaten healthy before. Don't start, I'm going to do 7 days of water fasting. Don't do that to yourself. All right. What I would highly recommend is start with intermittent fasting. Okay. Creating a window. I would also highly recommend prepare your body before you do fasting by removing sugars and processed foods from your diet, meat, dairy, those type of things. Do that first so that your body is in the process. Okay, I would highly recommend that as well as a tip. During the fast, rest. Don't try to fast and also be active. Okay, I see people make that mistake all the time. Okay, while you're fasting, another tip is be careful about your environment. Okay, you can't go everywhere. All right, if you know that there's a certain restaurant where you and your friends go, or your people are gonna be having this type of food on a day where you're fasting, I would highly recommend that you avoid that. Okay, because again, like once you get to a certain level, the type of discipline that you'll have, you won't have to be concerned with that. But that's also something you build up to, not something that you instantly have. Okay. Another really important part of the fasting is understanding that you will possibly and many times have withdrawal symptoms. Okay. A lot of the foods that you're eating are addictive, not not because you love them, but because they made you love them because of what they put in the food. Okay. And so there's going to be a lot of withdrawal symptoms. And those withdrawal symptoms look like something's going wrong. So quite often people stop the fast and they stop the healing process. All right, so that those withdrawal symptoms could look like nausea, vomiting, stomach cramping, a breakout on the skin, headaches. Um, it could look like a lot of different things. It often looks like something's going wrong, but what it really is that the body is purging itself, which is what you're supposed to be doing when you're fasting, because your body is healing itself. So that's hugely important as well too. Day 3, the first 3 days are usually the toughest. Okay, so keep that in mind. Um, Drink lots of water, lots of water. The way that we detoxify ourselves is with water. So the more water we put in our bodies, the more pleasant the experience is going to be. So drink lots of water. That's going to be important as well too. So those are some of the tips. Those are the types of fasts that you can do. You'll have to decide that for yourself. Really, really important. Let's get into these 10 benefits. So I'm going to share these 10 benefits with you, and then we're going to get out of here. All right. Benefit number 1, it promotes blood sugar control by decreasing insulin resistance. Okay. So it makes your cells more susceptible to accepting blood sugar. Okay. So the sugar goes inside of the cell more, which means that that's going to lower and control your blood sugar. But it also means that you're going to have less insulin resistance as well too, which is hugely important because these type of things are not only associated with diabetes, but also associated with conditions like PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome as well too, and a host of other things like weight gain. All right, hugely important. So that's one benefit, which is a huge benefit. Okay, huge, because this is also connected to cancer, and we'll talk about this in just a second. Number 2, it improves heart health, and it does this by decreasing blood pressure, triglycerides, and your cholesterol levels. Okay, so it does this by decreasing all 3 of those, and it improves heart health as well too by doing fasting. Okay, number 3, it reduces systemic inflammation, which is hugely important. So if you're feeling the inflammation in your joints, in your lower back, in your muscles all the time, chronically, this could be very helpful for you. And not only does it remove it from a symptomatic standpoint, meaning you feel the difference, but you can even look at your C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker in the body, that actually is reduced as well too. Hugely important. That's also associated with issues of the heart as well too, in terms of like cardiovascular disease, C-reactive protein. Number 4, it improves brain health. And this is really, really important because one of the benefits that I consistently hear from people who do fasting, especially extended fasting and water fasting, is the fact that they get this mental clarity. Well, they get that for a few reasons, okay? First of all, fasting is very detoxifying to the body, including the brain. The other thing is that fasting promotes what's called neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the growth of new neurons in the brain. Okay, so that whole idea that you can't grow new brain cells isn't true. Okay, so and fasting is one of the ways that you can actually grow new brain cells, and it specifically affects these neurons in the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain for learning and memory, hugely important. So if you're having issues with retaining things when you're learning or having issues with memory, fasting could be a very, very good help as well too. All right, it also increases what are called brain-derived neurotrophic factors, okay, BDNF, okay? This is a protein that supports neuronal survival and growth, okay? So your brain neurons, it supports their survival and their growth, all right? Fasting also increases cerebral blood flow, okay? So that's blood flow to the brain, okay? So the more blood flow you have, of course, you're gonna think better. You're gonna think quicker as well too. And it also helps with conditions of the brain like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's as well too. All right, so that's a huge benefit. Number, what we're on, 5 now, ketones. All right, so what you'll notice with fasting, most people are really concerned. They're like, if I don't eat, then I could die. Like, what? I have to eat. But what people don't understand is our bodies have a natural mechanism that has been built up due to our ancestors over hundreds of thousands of years, that our bodies have adjusted to being in periods of famine, being in periods of starvation, being without food. Like our bodies are prepared for that due to all these ancient mechanisms. And one of those ancient mechanisms inside of our bodies is that it creates what are called ketones. Okay, so our bodies primarily produce energy using oxygen and glucose. Okay, we get that glucose from the food that we eat, primarily carbohydrates. Okay, but when we're not using glucose, the body will create another type of fuel. And that fuel is for the brain and the body, and it's there in the absence of glucose when you're not eating. Okay, so the body will actually break down fat, which is something that you want the body to do anyway. It will break down fat, and instead of releasing glucose, it releases these ketones. Okay, and these ketone bodies not only are good for your metabolism to produce energy in the body, but they're also really good for the brain as well too. Okay, so they're also very healthy for the brain. All right, and also it's really important to know that this is a natural mechanism in the body, because the body will produce ketones when we're asleep, when we're exercising, and we use up all our glucose, like marathon runners, when we're on a low carb diet, and when we're fasting. Okay, so that's hugely important. And again, it also improves brain function, these ketones specifically. They noticed that when they would test out these ultra marathoners, people who would run these marathons back to back to back to back, they noticed that it will improve brain function, because typically what happens is the more and more you run and exercise and deplete your glucose, you start to lose some brain function. But they started to notice that these runners will start to produce these ketones, okay? And it'll actually improve their brain function. All right, number 6, weight loss. All right, and I just talked about that, but intermittent fasting has been proven in studies to be better than just simply calorie restricting. So you would have somebody who calorie restrict themselves to, let's say, 1,500 calories a day. But if you compared to somebody who just did intermittent fasting and had that time restricted window but ate more calories, the intermittent fasting was actually more effective at weight loss than just calorie restricting. Okay, so hugely important for that as well too, by doing the fasting. Number 7, it increases human growth hormone. This is important because as we increase human growth hormone, that improves our ability to make muscle, which increases metabolism. It also helps with weight loss, and it also helps with our metabolism in and of itself as well too. Number 8, it aids in cancer prevention. All right, that's hugely important because, you know, we're always trying to figure out how can we trigger our body to do what it's designed to do, which is heal itself, which is to regenerate itself, which is to protect, which is to reproduce. All right. This is one of those ancient sort of hacks in terms of like fasting. And it's been proven in studies in mice and other mammals that when you not only calorie restrict, but most importantly, fast, okay, you have that window of time where you're not eating, where you can allow your body to divert that energy that would be going towards digestion, towards healing. Well, it also heals in terms of like reducing tumor sizes. And it also has been shown, even in patients who take chemo and radiation, has been shown to reduce chemotoxicity as well too. Okay, so that's hugely important, because when you think about how cancer works, as I was describing how metabolism works with oxygen and glucose, well, a cancer cell works very different from a healthy cell. It actually uses what's called fermentation. It uses a totally different process. And that fermentation uses sugar, okay? As opposed to when you're fasting, there is no sugar to be used. Remember, we're using ketones. And those ketones are very good for reducing tumor sizes, detoxification, and also helping to kind of detoxify the body through, which is our next one, is autophagy. Okay, what is autophagy? Autophagy is this intracellular detoxification and cleansing that removes dead senescent cells, cells that need to be sort of kicked out of the body because they become ineffective and the DNA is damaged. Otherwise, those cells will become cancerous. Because just think about it. That's what a mutated cell is. A cancerous cell is a mutated cell, damaged DNA. And quite often that happens because the cell becomes ineffective, becomes toxic, et cetera, et cetera. Well, as you go into fasting, you go into this stage, what is called autophagy, after a long enough period. And that's really good because now this autophagy is not only going to detoxify the body, remove these dead senescent cells that have damaged DNA and mutations in them, but it's also anti-aging too. So it's going to make you look longer in the long run, the more and more you do it. But it also is going to recycle and rebuild the body as well too. And that's a huge benefit that people just don't take advantage of. So fasting could be that way, okay? And I got a big tip at the end. The last benefit that I'm gonna mention, and there are many more, is that it lowers blood pressure, okay? Now, that's really important because a lot of people struggle with trying to figure out how to maintain a healthy blood pressure. Well, it could be that you're eating too much, okay? And you're eating too much of the wrong thing, especially. All right, so that's really, really important. Now, the tip that I want to leave you with is this, and I think this is really important. When it comes to fasting, fasting is a lifestyle. All right, it's not something you do just to heal. It's something that we should be doing on a daily basis. All right, hugely important. And it's also important to know and understand that when you are doing fasting, you can't be doing it in a stressful way. Okay? You have to be doing it, as I mentioned before, resting is very important. Meditation and prayer is very important. Keeping a stress-free environment, not making this something as a form of punishment, but making this as a form of obedience to self. Okay, that's a huge tip that is really important. The psychological component to fasting in terms of like switching on that ability to heal, because fasting for one person could be starvation. They could look at it like starvation. Okay, so if you have one perspective on fasting, it's starvation to somebody who hasn't eaten in 7 days. As I mentioned before, I've done a 21-day water fast. Okay, so in 7 days, I could have been thinking of this in a stressful way and thinking of it as, like something that was, starvation. But instead, I thought of this as something for mental clarity, spiritual upliftment, and healing of the body. And so it switches what it does to the body. It's important to take that in consideration when you're doing a fast, okay? So I hope this has been helpful. Make sure you share this information with people out there. Remember, this grows because of you. When you share the content, you not only change your life, but you change somebody else. That's why they say that sharing is caring. Make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, and until the next time, peace and blessing. Thanks for watching this video, but be sure to check the next video out that's right here. But everything I talk about is how do we take a holistic and natural approach to healing other than a man-made approach? And also, how do we prevent dis-ease in the body as well too? Because, they say